Welcome back, everyone, to the football room. Today we are breaking down the scouting combine. We're each sharing a player that we feel like needs to prove their worth, and we're also sharing a player that we think is about to shock the world. A to Z NFL Fans on Facebook is streaming this episode, as well as A to Z Film Room on YouTube. Make sure you're following all three hosts on Twitter, and make sure you guys are subscribed wherever you guys catch podcasts, whether it's Spotify or Apple. The football room is now open. Welcome, everybody. The football room is open yet again. My name is Destin Adams. I'm a Colts beat writer and NFL draft analyst here at A to Z Sports. And joining me, like every single week going forward, are my guys, Damian Parsons, who has devoted his entire life to just being on a screen for you to watch him. Whether it's at Locked On NFL Draft, whether it's the Draft Network, he just wants you to watch every step of his life. And then my guy, James Foster, who here on the A to Z Film Room YouTube breaks down prospects for you guys throughout the year, just trying to make you guys smarter on all things football. So Damian, I'll throw it to you first, man. How's your week been?
It's been good, man. Prepping for next week, right? Prepping for the combine, getting ready to leave, getting ready to do everything we need to do when we get to Indianapolis. So it's been a good week. A lot of last minute time crunch and report crunch, but it's been a good time.
Hey, I love this time. I don't got to leave. I'm here. I'm here in Indy. I don't got to pack a suitcase like last time. I get to sleep in my own bed during the week. Like Damian,
you got to spend no money. Yeah, I get it.
I'll send some pictures or something like of me just like laying on my pillow. It'll be elite content there. But looking towards next week, all three of us are going to be in Indianapolis for the combine. So James, man, how are you doing as we prepare for Indianapolis?
Doing great. Just trying to get the last go through the list of combine invites that I haven't watched yet. My friend texted me the other day asking if I wanted to get dinner. I was like, no, I'm watching Utah's right guard. Can't make it. So that's how I'm living right now.
Hey, getting all 341 in, huh?
Yep. I think I'm approaching 300 players graded. I think I'm in like the 280s right now.
Hey, you got to crank out a good 50 plus in the next 6 days. I like it. I like to see that. But we're talking on combine today, as you guys can see. We're going to be jumping into guys that we think absolutely have to prove it at the scouting combine, as well as guys that we all feel are going to shock some people with how they perform. So I'm going to throw it over to James first here, and we're going to get to jump in, and he's going to start with the guy that he just feels absolutely has to prove it this week.
Yeah, I think that my prove it player for the combine is Texas defensive tackle T'Vondre Sweat, a player that I really liked on tape. Like he's so talented with his hands. Both of the Texas defensive tackles are him and Byron Murphy, and he's a huge space-eating nose tackle, pretty much immovable in the run game. He's listed at 346 pounds on Texas's website, and he refused to weigh in at the Senior Bowl, the only player that refused to weigh in. And that tells me that his weight was probably a little bit too high, and he didn't want that number in NFL team systems. So I think that for T'Vondre Sweat, obviously, like as good as he can possibly do in all of the drills, that can only help him. I don't expect him to be like a crazy tester. I think he might have a good 40 time, but I did notice kind of some lack of explosiveness on tape. So I would be surprised if he really gets up there in the vertical jump and stuff like that. But I really think just for Sweat, it's going to be about weighing in at a normal playable weight. Because if you're going to draft this guy in the top 50, you're ideally hoping that he can play a sizable number of snaps for you. You don't want to get into a Jordan Davis situation. So, coming in at a normal weight and then having, I think, expected numbers in the drills. Doesn't have to blow it away, but just has to have a solid performance at a healthy weight, probably under 350 pounds should be the target for him.
That's going to be, I think, I like the name in the pull of Tavondre Sweat. Because I think for me, it's going to be when it comes to him at the combine, I'm not even going to really pay attention too much to his testing. But when he gets on, if he does the field drills, I want to just kind of see how he moves, right? Like just, when they make him, lay down on their stomach, pop back up and, move laterally, like the ankle flexion, the actual lateral movement. Because especially we know that gap scheme runs are not going to work with him. So it's like, what do you do with a guy that size? You want to put him laterally with the stretch zone, wide zone runs. And I want to see just how he handles that. And of course, conditioning too, because that's a big part of why they do those drills on the field. The playing weight is going to be the weigh-in is going to be interesting. Because if I remember correctly, like Jordan Davis came in at like 340, he ran like a 4.7 or whatever he ran, stuff like that. And so it's like guys that come. Bryce Young came in and weighed in like 190, 200 or whatever. Like someone that wouldn't take his sweater off. Like he didn't want to throw or anything. So it was like, you just that, all right, you drunk some water before you got on that scale. We know that this isn't what you actually play at. You really play at 180, brother. We know how it is. But I think that's going to be the big thing for me. I like Sweat. I just want, the condition is going to be a big thing because as great as he is against the runner, he does collapse the pocket against the pass. How many snaps can you play? And that's going to be really big on determining how teams value how early they draft you. Because right now he's trying to beat that Jordan Davis comp, which coming out of college before the combine would have been a good thing, right? And I mean, even going to the combine would have been a good thing. But like the rookie year and even the second year after that, just the play percentage is going to be a big part.
Yeah, I mean, whenever Bryce Young was walking up to the scales last year, you could kind of just like hear the ocean sounds as he was walking up there. But I mean, Tavondre Sweat, I mean, the strength that this kid plays with, like that's evident on tape at the Senior Bowl. He's not going to get to just bully centers at the combine for these drills. So we're not going to get to see him bending a guy backwards and get that clip. So it's going to be how he moves side to side. I think those things are going to matter more than his 40 time and those things like that. The weight is going to be interesting because, like James said, opted not to weigh in at the Senior Bowl. I'm going to assume that if he decided to do that here, it'd be a little bit of a red flag for teams if we're just waiting until the pro day to get that number out there. You shouldn't take you an entire draft cycle to get to the number you feel comfortable putting out. So I think first and foremost is going to be the fact that he steps on the scale. It's going to matter because even if it's going to come in high, I feel like you got to at least show that you're willing to get on. So I think that's going to be big for him. And then also coming in, he's got to come in a little bit lighter than what I think some people are expecting him to come in at, like James is saying. But overall, like I want to see this guy beast the things he's supposed to beast. When he sits down for the bench, he better be able to push it because if you're not going to be a guy that is running this 4.8 40 for as big as he's going to come in at, like you better be able to at least show that strength when the spotlight's on it. So I'm excited to see what he looks like this week, but I agree he's a guy that has to prove it for sure. So we're gonna throw it over to Dame back, where he's gonna get to bring us a player that he feels like needs to prove it next week in Indianapolis.
Man, for me, it's the son of a goat, right? And that's Brenan Rice, the wide receiver out of USC. I think being 6'2", 6'3", 200 plus pounds, a big week for him would be big, just in general, right? To go out there and test well in the explosive drills, jump high, in terms of the forward in the vertical, jump high with the with the jumps, and then also running a time that's, I think 4.5 is good for him. But man, if he gets 4.4, he's going to really kind of change the narrative, right? Like, and a lot of people put so much, especially because during this process, once we get to Indianapolis, everyone puts so much weight on a timed speed, whereas like play speed is more important. But here we are, right? We're excited for the combine. We want to see what happens. If he goes out there and hits in the 4.4 range, jumps 37 plus, 10.6 in the broad, and he does those things well, he's going to catch the ball well. I think he'll handle the gauntlet drill. He does a solid job running routes and getting in and out of his breaks, even though he's a bigger body receiver. I just think a nice week for him will allow him to kind of shed some of the questions that people have for him. They want it because he's a bigger guy. Like, okay, so is he going to be X? Can he separate, things of that nature? Just want to see him go out there, play loose, play free, or test loose. I would say, since it's not a game, but just go out there and be you. Don't try to be your dad. Like you're not nowhere near built like your father. Like your dad was a much different build and player in terms of Jerry Rice. So I think for him, the 40 is going to be a really big test for him. I still like him in the third round, but I think if he does go out there, hits in the 4.4s, you're going to see people really start to talk his name up a little bit more. Because then what do? He went to Mobile, he checked boxes, right? He checked that box off the list. That draft process starts in Mobile. Once you get to Mobile and you go out there and have a great week like he did, showcase yourself. Now you go to Indianapolis to the combine. You interview well. There's no medical red flags, and you test and measure in well. That's also going to help you. Then all you got to do is go to your pro day and decide, all right, which one of these drills I'm not doing. You know what I mean? So you get to go out there and dictate the action and the pace. So Brenan Rice is a guy that I think needs to have a big week next week.
I'm looking at Bruce Feldman's freaks list. He was on it for this past year. Reportedly 38-inch vertical jump, hit 23 miles an hour on the GPS, 1.43 10-yard split. So, yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely reason to expect him to have a good performance. His Senior Bowl performance was so interesting to me because I felt like he showed in a lot of ways, he showed the opposite of what I saw on tape. Like, I thought he was stronger at the catch point in Mobile and less fluid as a route runner. So, yeah, I mean, he'll be interesting. Obviously, like, you could say this for everyone, but yeah, a big week in Indy following a solid week in Mobile, I think would be huge for him.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have the sons of former players, and for him, it just happens to be the greatest receiver of all time. I mean, there's going to be positives and negatives too that come with that. I mean, you want to separate yourself, but like your dad's Jerry Rice. So, I mean, Jerry Rice was even on the field at Mobile for that day 3 practice. And you just saw the amount of attention that he brought. Like, people just migrated towards him. And every player that I talked to would just talk about how, like, I'm hoping to meet Brennan's dad. So like that was a real thing. And I think he's done a good job in college of being his own player. And I think we see it a lot with guys who have kids that are playing at this level. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. has tried to separate himself from Marvin Harrison Sr. I think you've seen it even in the basketball world with Bronny and what he does with LeBron as his dad and trying to separate themselves, even if his name is Bronny James.
Himself by not scoring any points.
Yeah, Bronny has separated himself by not being his dad. But
definitively not.
But either way, like that's the first step for those guys that some prospects just don't have to deal with. And
right, no, 100%.
With Brendan, we're gonna go to the combine. He's gonna every testing metric he does is not gonna have his dad's name on it. Like, this is going to be Brenan Rice. This is going to be who he is. Every interview he does, will they ask about his dad? I'm sure, because there's parts of it where having a dad that played at that highest level, you've grown around football, you've been around it. The football IQ element should not be a con for this kind of kid. If it is, it's even a bigger red flag if you grow up around football and you don't know the X's and O's side of things a little bit more. So he's going to get to come down here and show it. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah on his yearly mock speaking up with media earlier today, I was on it, and he said that Rice is getting a lot of love in the second round already. So if he can go out there and put a good week in Indy following the Senior Bowl, I think that can kind of stamp it for him that he's a round 2 guy. And I think a poor week here is where you're going to see him fall in the third, and then unfortunately maybe in that early part of day 3 if he can't put a solid showing out. So yeah, we'll see how it all. Yeah, we'll see how it all ends up here, but I do always feel for these kids of former just Hall of Fame players.
It's tough, man. Yeah. You Michael Jordan's son, and you go play basketball. People are expecting you to be Michael Jordan, right? Like, Steph Curry's got a son. Eventually, whenever he starts playing ball, they're expecting him to hit logo threes. Like, it's just the weird. It's an expectation that you can't control. I think with him, he can't even. Like James talked about with him being on the freaks list and hitting 23 miles per hour. I remember Treylon Burks coming out was hovering around 22 and a half, somewhere in there from talking to people at Arkansas. And then he ran like a 4.5 something, in the 40. And it's like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's like, it all depends on what track coach you're working with, things like that, to really get that 10-yard split down and be able to hit it like in a big time moment, not at like a practice where there's no crowd. Now the NFL's turned the scouting combine into kind of a fanfare thing. Fans were let in last year. So it's like, I expect the same thing this year. So I think for him, man, just going out there having a good week, I think that really solidified himself. I would love to see him go in the second round. There's a lot of people a little down on him, even with the performance he had in Mobile. But if he can go out there and perform well and, like I said, handle all the business, hey, check that extra box, man.
And heading over to mine, my player who I think has to have a big week. It's a little bit different because I think it's a guy that I feel strongly is going to have a big week. But I think athleticism is just such a big part of him as a prospect that it's important to note. So my guy is Chris Braswell out of Alabama, edge rusher. He has had talented guys on the line with him the last couple of years that I think have overshadowed him a little bit. Obviously, Dallas Turner in this draft is expected to hear his name in the top 20. We saw Will Anderson last year get taken in the top 3, being the first defensive player off the board. And then Chris Braswell has just been that third guy over the last 2 years, and then that last year being able to be that second guy to Dallas Turner. But he's an absolute freak when it comes to athleticism. Like, he's a guy that I expect to just be near the top of these RAS charts when they come out. I think he's a guy that was also on the freaks list that James brought up earlier. He's a guy who, going into this last college season, had been listed at a vertical jump of 38.5 inches and was squatting over 700 pounds as an edge rusher. I don't think personally, I was expecting to get to see a lot of him down in Mobile, and I think he kind of even got lost in the grass a little bit there. So I think this is going to be his chance to really separate himself in an edge group where tier 1 is those top 3. I think Brenan Rice is teetering towards the tier 1, tier 2 range, and then there's a drop off. And I think Chris Braswell can really put himself on the map here and put himself in that second tier as a guy to look at in the second round with a week that I think he can put up. So I'm excited to see Braswell this week because I was a little let down that he didn't put on a show in Mobile.
Yeah, Mobile was – I was so excited to see him because I was like, man, like – I know I've seen the heavy hands, the strength, the bull rush, everything on tape. It's like I just want to see and feel that. And, being there, there was flashes of it. Like, there were moments where I felt like he was there, and I felt like, I wanted to see him just be the guy out there, right? Like, you got the Alabama on, you got the Alabama helmet, right? You know what I mean? You're thinking about the edge rushers we've seen come through Alabama, and you're supposed to be that next guy. I'm not saying that he's not, but just I didn't feel his presence as much in Mobile. So I'm with you, Destin. And I think, getting those testing numbers, seeing arm length, getting all that, those official verified measurements again, post Senior Bowl. Really want to see where he comes in at. But I think also just kind of the fluidity standpoint, right? The on-field drill, see how he moves. If they put him through any linebacker drops, can he flip his hips and turn? Can he be a guy like fire zone blitzes? Can you drop him off backside and, take away that quick slant if you're seeing pressure on the front side play and different things like that? I think if he can do those things, I think he can really help himself. But right now, I'm actually a little worried about how high he's actually going to go after Mobile because it felt relatively quiet to me.
Yeah, unless he was going up against the bear hugger, Patrick Paul, he wasn't having as much success with power. Like, Patrick Paul was just letting anyone into his frame and getting walked back, it seemed like. But yeah, we might have to have the Brenan Rice conversation because tier 1 for Trice is a little bit too much.
I said teetering. I mean, it's still those
he's
3.
Teetering tier 3 for me.
He's our tier 2 for me.
I mean, he's the top of that tier 2 class for me. And there's still a cutoff with the first 3. I mean, Dallas Turner, Latu, and then we got Jared Verse. Like, those 3 guys are still a cut above the rest for me. But I think Brenan Rice, I mean, I think you saw it in the Texas game. I mean, we're not even talking about Brenan Rice right now, but I can go on a Brenan Rice rant. But I still have Brenan Rice like right there in that second tier personally.
Yeah, we can save that. That'll definitely be a good one to get into. So should I head back with the sleepers then?
Yeah, so we'll go back. Yeah.
My sleeper, and this is not a sleeper like no one's talking about them, but maybe a sleeper that nobody's talking about is having a great combine performance. Mine is going to be Austin Booker, edge rusher out of Kansas. I have a top 50 grade on Austin Booker. He's only 240 pounds. He's only played 505 career snaps. But this dude is an explosive, dynamic athlete. He's already so talented with his hands, given how inexperienced he is. He's just automatic executing that inside counter. Would love for one of the stats companies to say like what his success rate was on inside counters. I know PFF has that data somewhere, but it felt like every time he tried to slice into the B gap, he was winning at will. And he's got the 34-inch arms. I do kind of question his bend a little bit at the top of the rush. I don't know that he's going to run a great 3-cone, but outside of that, I expect Austin Booker to be an explosive tester.
I mean, Booker was one of the guys at the Senior Bowl. I mean, I just talked about Braswell being a guy that kind of let me down. But Booker was a lot of fun to watch all week. I mean, I feel like he was a guy that brought the juice every practice. He was a guy that just really shocked me at how quick his first step was off that line. So I am excited to kind of see what he looks like this week. I really do not know what to expect testing-wise with him. Watching him on tape, I didn't think he was an excellent athlete. I think he looked better on when I was at the Senior Bowl and kind of being up close and seeing him. So it'll be interesting to kind of see which of those is proven factual, I guess. So we'll see how his week in Indy goes.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that 10-yard split because his first step in Mobile, like during whether it's team drills or even one-on-ones, it was quick and it was explosive. He got off the ball in a hurry, and I'm excited to see what that 10-yard split looks like for him. Can he keep his, this is all track practice. Can he keep the shoulders down, drive through the first 10 meters or 10 yards or so? But I think for him, man, I mean, and this is a man who works too, because like after practice in Mobile, he would literally be by himself at the field goal post, working on pass rush moves, stuff like that. So I'm sure he's going to be prepared for this, but I'm going to be really interested to just see how he handles the week. You know what I mean? Big bright lights. Yeah, you're away from Kansas. Now you're, at the NFL scouting combine with the rest of these athletes at your position. And it's a different ball game if you go go behind someone that runs a 4.4 and they're chiseled and they look a certain way. It's the same thing with quarterbacks. Throwing behind a guy that, throwing behind Anthony Richardson last year, if you're not CJ Stroud, yeah, I don't know if I want that, right? I don't want to be Sam Hartman throwing behind Joe Milton. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that problem at all. So I'm gonna be very, very interested to see how Booker tests, but I think he might test pretty well. This is an explosive kid down in Mobile, and I like what I saw from him. So
Dane, go ahead with the second guy here.
My guy is going to be Georgia running back Kendall Milton. And this is a guy you're talking about, a sleeper, a name that most people don't talk about. But at 6'1", 220, this guy has burst. The type of burst that when he gets the ball and that Red Sea parts, he can crash through the first and second level into the third very quickly for a big, strong back. And he's built like an NFL back. His game is he's got a good game. Him both of those running back, him and Dejon Edwards. Edwards being more of the elusive, slippery type of runner, a little bit smoother in terms of being able to move, footwork, stuff like that. But I think Kendall he should shock some people because when you see him and he has that build, that size, and that frame, I think that he is a guy that hits. I'm not gonna lie. I think he can crack that 4.5 into the high 4.4s. I think he has that type of juice and everything with his game. So I think for him, he's able to go out there and test well, especially in the 40. Right? You clock. I mean, you weigh in at 220, 225, And even if you hit 4.5, that's still great, right? But if you're able to hit 4.47, 4.48, it's going to really open some people's eyes. Because what does this process do for evaluators and scouts? If you do something out here, or next weekend at the combine that they weren't expecting, it just sends everybody back to the tape. Scouts included, GM, scouting directors, everybody goes back to the tape and asks, did I miss this? And so that's what you want to do as a player. And I think that Kendall Milton is going to be able to do that. I wouldn't be surprised if he does a solid job on the bench as well. Because, again, he's a very strong body frame young man and runs downhill. For me, as a former running back, as much as the testing matters to me, it's the field drill, it's the bag drills, right? Like, it's the footwork. Are you getting your knees up? Because you got to worry about, in the NFL, bodies being on the floor. Can you step and keep your feet up over the bags and over these defensive linemen and offensive linemen? Whoever gets pancaked, somebody's getting pancaked in the at the line of scrimmage. Can you handle that? But also, the different change of direction drills, catching the football. He did a solid job of that at Georgia. Didn't throw it to him a ton, but he seemed a little bit more natural catching the ball than most bigger backs. So I think the on-field drills for me is going to be very, very important for Kendall Milton. But I think that he could open a lot of eyes next week.
Yeah, I thought Milton on tape was a solid, functional running back. Like, I love his power. I like his ability at that size, kind of like you said, to maneuver traffic, like especially on gap runs. Good patience, letting his block set up, and I don't know. I feel like, to me, running back is probably the position where, especially with the 40 time, where it seems like it's the least translatable to on-field speed. Like, at every position, there's players like that where a receiver will run like a 4.56, but they're a blazer on the field. I feel like with running backs, it's just the 4.3 guys are obviously really fast, but I don't know. I think that it's one of the less important positions, like, as far as their testing, and like you said, it's just seeing them move on the field drills. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Kendall Milton.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 40 is interesting because I think the 40 is more important. I mean, this is going to sound very obvious, but the faster players in the NFL, the 40 is going to matter more because on tape you're like, that dude's fast. But I think the 40 allows these guys to kind of put them in comparison to others when they're watching them on tape. So it just puts a number there, and it'll be interesting to kind of see this running back class. I mean, more than any in this class, I just have no idea how they're going to come off the board. Every team is looking at the running back position differently, what they need. Obviously, the value at running back is going down a little bit, but every team needs this different type of backup running back. I mean, Milton's going to be interesting because I think a good testing week in Indy can make it to where he is a guy that gets selected day 3, doesn't have to worry about being a late day 3 guy or an undrafted guy, because I think this running back class is going to be really interesting because I think there's going to be a lot of guys that could be left out of the first 7 rounds because of the value at running back and just looking at an undrafted free agent contract. But if you go out there and test well at running back, I feel like it could definitely go a long way for him being able to hear his name called, which I think for a guy like him is the most important part right now. And then so going here to the last guy that we're going to talk about, and I'm sure I will get pushback from some people in the comments, and I may get pushback from you guys, but when I look at Keon Coleman from Florida State, I know that he's getting painted as this guy that contested catch only type, doesn't run a lot of routes, isn't a guy that's going to create a lot of separation at the next level, which when you say doesn't create a lot of separation, it's like a trigger word for some people in the NFL world where they're like, oh, can't have that receiver, don't want that receiver, seen that, done that, no. And I get it from this last year. Florida State did not put him in a situation to really make him rely on those things. And, I mean, he was making contested catches at such a high rate that I do think he got too reliant on it this past year. But when I throw on 2022 at Michigan State, I see a guy that, when asked to rely on his route running, can do it. I see a guy that is quick in his breaks. I see a guy that can create separation. So I'm really excited for this opportunity at the scouting combine, because I really do think Keon Coleman's going to be a guy that tests better than people expect. And if he can show the speed element, if he can show the cuts in and out of his breaks, like, and I understand that routes on air are not for everybody, but I do think it's going to be an opportunity for him to show what he can do in that element. So I'm excited to see Keon Coleman this weekend. I think just go ahead and bookmark this statement. Like, I think he's going to be a guy that just shocks everyone with how good of an athlete he actually is.
No, Destin, it's funny because, talking to people close to him, that's basically everything I've heard, is that he's going to test better than people in the analytics models and everything else, right? It is that gets thrown out there during draft season than what they expect. I mean, and a lot of times it always goes back to the phrase, man, understanding that what you see on tape is not the end all be all, in terms of guys are not asked to do certain things in certain offenses and defenses. And Florida State, I mean, they didn't have the most accurate quarterback in Jordan Travis. He was very, very, we talk about, me and Keith talk about it on the pod. Yeah, like the result is it's something. No, the result is good. The process is something. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. It's like watching a crazy cartoon back in the 90s, where just it's very it's unhinged watching Jordan Travis in the pocket sometimes. And fun player, but he just does things that it's one of those things as a coach, you're just like, no on the sideline, and then it's like, okay, never mind, like, forget it. And that's what you get with Jordan Travis. But I think if anyone expects or is expecting, Keon Coleman to not test well, I think that they will be surprised by what he did, what he's able to do down in Indianapolis next week.
Yeah, I think that I even think that there are things that he probably wasn't asked or given the opportunity to do in Florida State's offense. Like, he was running he seemed kind of like their secondary receiving option based on the routes that he was running, and just like running a lot of like backside fades and stuff. But one of the things that I think he did put on tape was his speed, and seeing him, catch a quick slant, outrun the entire defense. So yeah, I mean, based on the tape and like based on what you guys are saying, I would probably expect him to run a good 40 time. And I think that I need to go back and watch his Michigan State tape. Apparently he's been playing through an injury actually both seasons at Michigan State and then at Florida State. So I'll go check out that 2022 tape, see if anything's different. But I mean, we had
everything is different, James. 2022 Keon Coleman in Michigan State and 2023 at Florida State. Like, other than the fact that the back of the jersey says the same last name,
says
like,
Coleman.
You just don't know that it's the same player. Like, they're just asked to do such different things. I mean, still productive in both ways too. I mean,
yeah,
58 catches, 798 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 2022 at Michigan State, and then obviously the 11 touchdowns, 50 catches, 658 yards at Florida State this last year. Like, I would be excited to hear your feedback once you watch 2022 a little bit more of him.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Keon Coleman is someone that's kind of, the pendulum has kind of swung in both directions with him, where it's like early in the season, back in October, when he's getting mocked in the top 10 consistently, I'm like, okay, this guy's overrated. Now that he's in the late 20s and like 30s, I'm like, okay, that's a solid spot for him. Don't have a major problem with that. So I'm pretty much a Keon Coleman centrist at this point, I feel like.
Yeah, he's
I saw a mock draft have him go like at 54 yesterday from a pretty big name mocker. I'm not going to bring his name up, but I was like, oh my gosh, like there's just no way.
I don't foresee that happening at all. The 54
Lance
that's
Zierlein has him at 48. That's the lowest person on him in NFL media.
Lance also has Bo Nix as a top 10 player in this draft. I'm just
he knows ball.
He
knows ball.
Yeah, he knows something. He knows something. But no, I think with Keon, I think when you got a guy, I think the measurement's gonna be big, right? Because these schools lie a lot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I promise they lie a ton. So like if he comes in at actual legit 6'3", 6'4", 220, 215, runs 4.4, jumps close to 40. If he tests and does other things he's supposed to do well, like everybody that I talk to close to him tell me, he's going to solidify himself because those are the things you can't teach, right? Those are absolutely things you cannot. That's God-given ability compared to, stem towards the outside hip of the corner and, use your body, chicken wing, and, snap at the break point. The things that are coachable, I don't make such a big deal about, because it's all about now going to the league and plus having the right personal receiver coach. Coaching things, if you can improve it, we can work on it. But if it's something that you can't improve, now I got to see how does it impact you? How will you win without it at the next level? And how big of a loss will it be since you can't improve that, right? Mac Jones couldn't move and he had a noodle arm, right? It's not much, but there's nothing else we can do. We can give you weapons, but I can't improve the things that you struggle with that's going to hold you back in your career. So like, that's one thing I've always, anytime I have my sheets here when I'm watching prospects, cans and can't nots, just split down the middle. What can you do? What can't you do? And if the cans outweigh the can'ts, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how he measures in. I mean, he was listed at 6'4", 215 last year, but we also saw Quentin Johnston listed at 6'5", and then get measured in at 6'1.5". So, like, whoever knows? I mean, my favorite story to ever tell about colleges and height, just lies. Like, they can call it what they want, but lies.
It's typically at big schools too.
Hey, well, I went to a real small school, like a school that none of you guys would probably heard of if I said it. But there was a kid on our basketball team that was listed at 6'9" my freshman year. And, I mean, I'm a tall guy. I mean, James and Damian have seen me in person. Like, in shoes, I'm probably like 6'5", 6'4". And I'm sitting next to this guy in our first class. And I look over, and I pull up our website, and he says he's 6'9". And, like, I'm looking over his head, like sitting at the table right now. And we stand up, and I'm like, I got like half an inch on him. And I just tap him on the shoulder. I'm like, so Tyler, 6'9", huh? He said, yeah, I guess you're 6'10", and just laughs and walks out. So, I mean, school's ability just to lie on those things just always crack me up.
Somebody got paid. There's no way. Somebody got paid, man. That was an inside job. Someone got a check to write 6'9" instead of 6'6" or 6'2". Yeah, that's wild. But I mean, hey, money talks, baby.
Hey. Yeah, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. But, hey, if you guys remember from our first episode last week, we are going to be having a segment called The Draft Tank. It's going to be a staple of what we do here. And it's going to just be a way that we can get off some of our hottest draft takes that we've just been holding in the holster, ready to fire. James was brave enough to enter there first week. And Damian is going to be stepping in on to the hot seat for week 2. So Damian, man, let's hear it. Let's hear that hot take that you just can't wait to get out.
Man, looking at the tight end class, it's a good group, but of course the top 2 names, Brock Bowers and Jatavian Sanders, for me is a guy that I think most people have Cade Stover from Ohio State as tight end 3, but I like Cade as well. But my guy at Penn State, Theo Johnson, is 6'6", 265, and he's supposed to be a good athlete and test well. Also, I think he has a real good shot, actually, to be the tight end 2 of this class. You're talking about a guy that can block, who can stretch the seams. I think there's a lot of untapped potential with him in terms of detaching him from the line, making him that mismatch weapon. Tight ends are tight ends are the biggest mismatches in the NFL. If you got a good tight end, a guy that linebackers can't cover, that means you got to bring a safety down. What does that do? That changes how the math looks in the run game. So having a good tight end is paramount for an NFL offense. So having a guy with his Penn State did not have the greatest quarterback play, right? I don't know the last time they had good quarterback play. Let's be honest. Like, it's Penn State. This is one of the things that they struggle to develop and recruit is quarterbacks. And I think for him, the ceiling is high, and the potential that we have not seen him scratch the surface yet. And like I said, when you're 6'6", 265 and can move, especially in a straight line the way he does, and he showcases some ability as a route runner as well. I think it was against not Syracuse, might have been Illinois, where he kind of runs a pivot in the middle of the field. And to watch him sink his hips and rotate out of that, rotational flexibility from his hips, outstanding stuff for a guy, let's say 6'5", 6'6". So for me, I think he has a really good shot of being the tight end 2 of this class. And I mean, it depends on where he lands, and depends on where Brock Bowers lands. We all know the situations matter. He could walk out as tight end 1, but right now I'm not going to go that high. I'm going to just say I think he has a strong chance to be the tight end 2 of this class.
Damian, I'm buying that, and I honestly might be considering suing you for stealing my idea, because I also have Theo Johnson as tight end 2. Firmly in the Theo Johnson tight end 2 camp. I think, like you mentioned, he's one of the guys at the top of this class that changes the math at the tight end position, being able to hold up as a blocker, and then also what he can do as a receiver. I think the play that you're thinking of, there's like a stick route, like maybe a stick option route, and then he like flips his hips, turns around, and then breaks inside quickly. He's also shown the ability to like do a really good job using his weight displacement to get defenders leaning upfield and then break inside. He'll use some rocker steps. A lot of the routes that he's running at Penn State are just kind of seam routes. Like tight ends aren't usually running super diverse route trees. And I feel like there are times where his footwork in and out of his breaks is kind of sloppy. That's like going back to our conversation. If you see a guy do something 5 times on tape and then you see him not do it 5 times, you know that he can do it. He just needs to, practice, develop those skills. And yeah, I mean, he's at 6'6", 257, like what he can do as far as at least dying slowly against the defensive end in the run game compared to Jatavian Sanders, who I feel like is going to get uprooted. You saw that in the Alabama game, really all over his tape. Brock Bowers has his limitations as a run blocker. I'm a big fan of Theo Johnson, and I would totally agree that he's tight end 2 in this class.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tight end group is interesting because, I mean, Brock Bowers, I feel like is a pretty easy to say going to be the top tight end drafted. That second through like 6 area is going to be interesting. I'm not a Cade guy from Ohio State. Like I'll save it for now, but he's pretty low. But like Jaheim Bell from Florida State, Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, Jared Wiley, all these guys come to mind of guys that I would rather have over Cade personally. And you guys can do the math if you'd like on how that number goes out. But I definitely think Theo could be a guy that ends up being the second tight end taken, or at least the second best tight end out of this class. I mean, just looking at like the opportunities that he didn't get at Penn State, like, I mean, dude had 7 touchdowns last year, and I don't have it up right now, but he had like 30 catches. Like I don't remember exactly how many it is. I'd have to look. But like he ended in that like low
doesn't
part
even
of
have 1,000
catches.
career receiving yards, but like that's how it is with tight ends. They're like,
especially with bad quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah. Like Dawson Knox got drafted in the 3rd round, was like barely used as a receiver. You see it every year with tight ends. So that's not something I worry about.
But like 34 catches to 7 touchdowns, like, love that ratio for a bad offense, right? Like the fact that you got that many important grabs out of just 34 chances, like that's great. I mean, even going back to look at 2022 now that I have it up, he only had 20 catches in 2022, still had 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, like that type of production going to the NFL, like I think that matters. And I think we see tight ends that aren't crazy, don't have crazy usages, go higher in the NFL draft when people are looking at those type of things. I mean, we saw Brennan Strange last year go on day 2. And he wasn't a guy that I thought that was going to happen with Jacksonville. So, like, those kind of things are just – you never know how it's going to be. I'm buying this take, though. Like, I definitely think Theo Johnson has a good chance to be tight end, too. I won't say that he is my tight end, too, in the class, but I think his receiving ability is going to be prioritized higher in that early part of the second to where a second tight end could be taken. That he's an interesting name to watch for sure.
Let's go.
Hey, so
just made me some
2 weeks in, 2 weeks in, we've not had a person step in and just have two no's yet. So that means when I go in the third week,
you need to come up.
That doesn't spell well for you, brother. I'm telling you now. It does not spell well for you.
The odds are stacked against me. The odds are not looking good for me to get a buyer next week. But we'll see.
Brevin
so far, we've talked defense, we've talked tight end, and hey, we'll see. Any of these dynasty fantasy people are listening right now. Maybe they're like writing that down. Hope not.
That was not serious, by the way.
Oh, no. But we'll see. We will be back again next week. Again, all three of us are going to be at the Scouting Combine next week. The next episode, we're going to get to react to some of these performances. We're going to get to kind of share what we got to hear in Indianapolis, because if one thing's for sure from these last few years in Indianapolis, these last few years in Mobile, lips are not tight at these events. You start to learn that rumors start getting out during these type of events when you get all 32 teams in the same zip code and just letting them share what they got on their chest. So it's going to be really fun to see how everything plays out over this week in Indianapolis. My name's Destin. That's Damian. That's James. And we will be back next week when the football room opens again.